on this podcast, we mainly discuss various things companies can do to drive profitable growth. But of course, all companies are also dependent on external factors, namely things like the economy. I think interest rates are a good example. To quote Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, I believe the world's largest bank, he wrote in the last shareholder letter that interest rates are extraordinarily important. They are the cosmological constant or the mathematical certainty that affect all things economic. So it's very useful for business leaders, marketers, executives to kind of understand the waters that we're all swimming in. And to kind of enlighten us on that topic, we've brought on today's guest, Martin Paasi. Martin is a financial expert at Nordnet Bank, chairman of the board of the Finnish Business School graduates, also known as Suomen Ekonomit, and co-host of Rahapodi, one of the most popular podcasts here in Finland, and also, I have to say, a much more popular podcast than this one.
Yeah.
But welcome to the show, Martin.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We'll start off with an easy question.
Sure.
Which is kind of, could you give an overview of, we're recording this in April 2023.
Yeah.
So kind of what's the current state of the Finnish economy and how did we end up where we are?
Yeah, we don't even need to remember the date because, the economy is a slower moving thing than that. But basically, you could say that the Finnish economy hasn't grown for 15 years, 15. It has been sort of just moving sideways. And it has to do with the fact that neither has productivity become any better during 15 years. And productivity is the core of all real growth. I mean, you can grow the GDP by taking loans or something like this, but if you want to have real growth, it's about productivity. And unfortunately, during this same 15 years, the current account has, in an accelerated way, become more and more negative, meaning that the economy as a whole is living on debt. I mean, we are buying more stuff than what we are selling to the world. That means that the economy as a whole is running on debt. So the GDP wouldn't even have been the same as 15 years ago if it wouldn't be for the debt. And debt is something that or a deficit is something that we also seen in the public finances, as we have the same 15 years we have been running around with a budget deficit in the public finances. So my concern is not that much that 70 or so percent, the debt level of 70 or so percent compared to the GDP, but rather the fact that the GDP, i.e. the economy as a whole, is basically dying. And this is especially clear when you compare to our neighbors in the south or in the west, where GDP has continued to grow after the financial crisis. So the biggest concern is the fact that the engine that pays for everything has been slowing down for the last 15 years. And on top of that, the lack of urgency when you follow the public discussions. So
not a very rosy picture, but
no.
The $1 million question then is, why is Finnish productivity lagging behind other Nordic countries, other Western countries?
It's twofold. Well, basically the generic answer to that is that it's because of lack of investments. And then the other, this is true in itself, in its own right, but also the fact that basically Nokia, the mobile phone maker, ceased to exist, and the growth story of Nokia came to an end. And the combined effect of these two is that there has been a surplus capacity for Finnish companies, generally speaking, for the last 10 or so years, and therefore there is no need to invest. And when you don't invest, at the same time you don't invest in more productivity, because every time you invest in something that makes more and better for less, which is productivity in a nutshell. So when there hasn't been any investment, there has been no productivity growth, and hence no economic growth either.
Okay. And so before we start talking about the future and productivity, just today, again, do you see, what are your kind of predictions for the near-term future? Is it going to get worse before it gets better? How should companies maybe especially think about the current situation? Is it a time to invest or a time to be more cautious, because slowing GDP, high debt levels is a source of concern? How should you think about the current, like right now?
Well, it's dependent on the company in question. But if you're an exporting company that, the majority of your revenue comes from abroad, then it might obviously be a point to invest. And perhaps due to our membership in NATO now more than ever, because before there has been a significantly higher geopolitical risk in being in Finland. Now that is basically zero, next to zero. We have to remember that NATO is the absolutely by far the biggest military alliance on planet Earth. There's no force in hell who's gonna win that force, and as a result, there's no point in attacking a NATO country. This is sort of the logic of joining NATO. So from that perspective, it's now a better time than ever to invest in Finland. If your markets are domestic, the short answer is, as you correctly hinted already, that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And then the question is, how worse is it going to get? And when it gets better, is it a little better or a lot better? And all these things depends on multitude of things, aspects.
So even though I just looked at consumer confidence in Finland has been increasing for the last 3 months, so beginning of the year, but obviously compared to historic levels, we're still very low. But you would say it's too early to open the champagne bottle and just start, because there's still some concerns, or we need to wait before we can really see where this thing is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, the economy as a whole is a slow-moving thing. It's like well, you shouldn't use this example anymore, but I mean, it's a fossil fuel tanker in the archipelago with a lot of rocks. I mean, it takes forever to change the course of direction, and as such, we are now first seeing the effects of rising interest rates, which in its own rights already puts a significant strain on the households. I mean, the energy crisis aside, the rising interest rates is a cause for concern, as is the dilemma that the central banks, especially in Europe, are facing at the moment, i.e. a slowing economy, which would need stimulus, paired with a sort of high inflation rate, which would need sort of tightening. And the problem, the huge sort of EU-wide problem is that the last 20 years or so, 15 years or so, all the problems in the EU, all the economic problems have been dealt with by extremely loose monetary policy, which is what the European Central Bank.
And what does that mean in practice? Like, what are the things that they've done?
They have done quantitative easing, which means that the central bank has a guy in the back office who writes a sum on their bank account, on the central bank's bank account, an IBAN number. There's an IBAN number, and then he writes a number, money number on the account from thin air. So he writes 1,000 billion euros. And then the front office, the desk that buys financial instruments, buys with that 1,000 billion euros, they buy euro area government bonds, and these bonds end up on the balance sheet of the central bank, and the money is left in the markets. And by doing this, there's a lot of more money in the market and less financial instruments where to park it, as the central bank just bought them away. And this by doing like this, the hope has been that it enforces the markets to lend to new investments that would
to increase productivity, essentially.
To increase productivity, exactly.
Has that been the case, you think?
No, because there has been sort of overcapacity as it is. So the only thing that this has resulted in is that the fiscal policy has become very loose as well. And there has been sort of no sort of tough decisions to make the markets better or the national economies better. Because typically they are extremely unpopular in the politics. So the monetary policy has made it possible for the politicians not to take the tough decisions. Which has resulted in a patient that you had, there was a car accident. There is this patient coming rolling in on the ER. And then you put the patient on the bed and put some, cords to the patient, but you do nothing to the patient. You just leave it there, keep it alive, but absolutely you don't fix the broken bones or anything. You just let the patient lie there for a year or 10. And this is what you could say that we have been doing in the euro area, especially.
Okay, so
and this is because we have a common monetary policy, but we have national fiscal policies. So
that creates a lot of tension.
So this is sort of a ridiculous halfway solution, which is also where the criticism towards the euro stems from.
Okay, so there's been for the last 15 years or very too loose monetary policy in Finland, at least no GDP growth, no real GDP growth at least. I think debt levels have doubled or something like that, public debt. So how do we? So it's not a very, very great, but at least it's a low base to start from.
Yes.
So what's the solution then? If it's what is the solution?
So the solution. I mean, there's a million small things that you need to do. You need to make the employment markets more fluid and dynamic.
How do we do that? Are you saying immigration or?
No, I mean just that you make it easier for people to move after a job. I mean now it's there's a lot of things that hold you back. You also have this social security system that is so complex that nobody really knows what happens if you take on a job. I mean, will I lose money or gain money or will I, nobody knows. And especially if there's a smaller job that doesn't finance your life altogether, it's extremely risky to take on a smaller job in order to get some additional financing because all the support flows, money flows might disappear. So this is also a very degenerative feature of the Finnish market. And we need to get rid of all this. We need to make it so that everybody understands that it's always, and not only understands, but that it actually is. It pays to take on a job. And you know what happens, and you don't need to second guess it all the time. And rather that it's clear, and that you also can move after jobs. So that if there's you're in Oulu and you need to go to Helsinki, it should be sort of realistically possible. And now there's issues with owning an apartment and selling and buying, and it's expensive as hell to live in Helsinki and all these things. So we need to make all that the job market more dynamic.
Got it.
I mean that's the big answer. Sorry, what was the question again?
What we need to do to kind of to address the situation, but just touching on the job market, what are your thoughts when it comes to demographic changes? Because there's a couple of trends.
Okay, yeah.
There's like the Great Resignation is happening, or happened at least.
Yeah.
There's we all know that there's not enough population growth in Finland, so we would need immigration to cover that. So, what are the big trends when it comes to demographics? Because obviously you can't talk about productivity without talking about people.
No.
And so
that's a really, really good question. And the point is that we are getting older, and there is for every year there's fewer people that needs to finance everything. I mean, through the taxation system, fewer people, fewer companies that need to finance the cost of more people. So obviously this is not going to end well if we can't sort of address this issue. And the problem is also that in order to get foreign direct investments to Finland, if you're going to invest in a gigafactory in Vaasa to make batteries for cars, you are not only looking at the next year and then the year after that, for what the market looks like. You are looking for 10, 20 years forward. And you want to make sure that there is, not too much bureaucracy. You need to make sure that there is a continuity in the political climate, and you need to make sure that there's enough people to do the job. Because if there isn't, you run into issues, and then you don't invest. But at the same time, I think that it's the wrong way to go about it to sort of try to recruit everybody from everywhere around the world to come to Finland for jobs, because we need to get the jobs in place first.
Right.
We can't just sort of say, "Hey, everybody, come here."
Come here, and then you'll figure out what.
Let's figure out what you're gonna do. So. I have been suggesting this solution that, and this is the part where the government actually can play a role. We need to make Finland the number one country on the planet Earth for foreign direct investments. This is the defibrillator, the one that jumpstarts your heart, if you will, to get the Finnish economy going, i.e. You get companies taking their own cash, put it in Finland in order to start doing stuff here. This is basically what we need to do on a sort of massive scale. And just to paint you a picture, why don't we? I mean, we could of course ask the companies that are already in Finland that, hey, why won't you invest 100, 200, 300 billions of euros in order to make so that we make more in Finland rather than less? Well, they will say that it's a good social exercise, but we are a company.
It needs to make financial sense.
It wouldn't make financial sense for us. So therefore, why don't we ask those 100 companies around the world that are struggling with growth pains, that are growing so fast that they don't know how to deal with it, and ask these 100 companies that, okay, so guys, what would it take for you to make your next significant investment in Finland? And then they would sort of write the wish list. And then we, as a government, we would collect the wish lists. We would sort of look at, which wish lists are closest to each other. And then we go back to these companies that have a most similar wish lists and say that, okay, why don't we do such? If we promise to fix your wish lists, you will promise, we will sign a contract that you will then invest in Finland. And this way, we would also, as a government, we would know that, by doing these changes into Finland with regards to legislation, bureaucracy, immigration, whatever, tax levels, whatnot, we would know that these actions that we're taking, they will actually contractually bring this kind of business to Finland. So it's not like we are sort of fixing everything and there's still nobody around, but rather do it the other way around, that we ask what needs to be done. Then we make a contract on it, we write it, put it on paper, and we say that, okay, we'll fix this. And then if you then sign an agreement that you will then make that corresponding investment. The point here is that the wish list is not sort of, most of them look the same. and it will have to, the issues they have is connectivity to the rest of the world. I mean, physically, airplanes, trains, whatever. But I mean, how the hell to get to Finland, and how the hell to get there from Finland, and how to get our potential products from Finland, or the raw material to Finland, or whatever. And this will, in itself, will already steer which companies will sort of invest in Finland. So obviously, miners won't sort of come to Finland, and that's fine, because we don't want them here, because that's not necessarily the point. We need to do stuff that have a sort of high degree of value, so that the work that is done in Finland has a maximum value for input of ours, and this also corresponds with the companies. They won't come to Finland for any actions taken by the government if it doesn't make any sense. So this way we get actually the markets to decide which businesses will come in the end, and then they will also ask for recruitment passports. Because they need to make sure that, okay, we put 20 billion euros into Finland to start making batteries for EVs. We need to have the people. We can't take your word for granted. We need to make sure that we will have the people. So that's something that we should absolutely then give them. I mean, if there's Tesla, I mean, there's not going to be issues with trafficking or anything. So when if we talk about this, they would start building a factory in Vaasa, where they have actually all the minerals ready. And they will begin by hiring everybody from Finland, because it's easier and it's cheaper. But then they will also know that, okay, if there's not enough right talent at any point in time, we can bring guys from Denver or Shanghai or wherever the hell they are, and bring them to Finland. And it's like, we just bring them, and then we just tell the migration office that these people are now living in Finland, and this way sort of get around also the discussion of to make sure that how to get the right workforce to Finland, because this way, again, the market forces decided which companies in the first place would be investing in Finland. And then when we give them the passport to also hire people, they will also hire the right people right away, because they will literally either be employed during the whole trip from somewhere else to Finland by that same company, or then they will hire somebody from somewhere else, but they are hiring that person directly to do work in Finland. And perhaps it's necessary to point out that by doing this approach, why is it so effective? Well, to begin with, to get 100, 200, 300 billion euros to Finland as such on a bank account, it's better than nothing. But obviously they are not putting them in a bank account, but rather they are, they're going to build a factory or a R&D center or whatever. And it means that there is immediately, whatever the investment, that investment goes to work from day one. They will build a factory. They will employ people. The people will get salaries. Those that build the factory will get salaries that are taxed, and Finland gets, the government gets tax revenue from the employers employees and also from the employers and the companies and so forth.
So, and there's probably there's very long-term effects of people with know-how moving here, staying here, and we're building maybe it could be for instance, Finland could become like a EV battery.
Exactly. Then we create these knowledge clusters, hotspots. Yeah. I mean, like Slush, but perhaps in medical equipment or EV battery technology or whatever. But it also, when we get a lot of these hot growth struggling companies to come to Finland, we can also reap the benefits of those sectors of what they're doing and building hotspots, knowledge hotspots. Yeah. So that the best knowledge of doing these things is actually here.
And it does seem like in some ways, we are in a good position. We have rule of law, very stable, very low crime rate, etc. And now, as you mentioned, with NATO, there's less geopolitical risk. And there are examples like Singapore, for instance, of small nations that have done that through regulation, attracted a lot of foreign investment. And Singapore is built in a swamp, and Abu Dhabi is built in the desert.
Yeah, I mean, those are great examples. They have absolutely zero stuff going for them from a geopolitical or geographical point of view, and still they have managed to do these things. Finland has a lot of. They're in a lot better position to do this than Singapore or Abu Dhabi ever was. Yeah. So it's literally a matter of just deciding, let's do this.
Yeah. So it's about taking the proactive approach, being very specific. And as you mentioned, if we can get it some kind of contractual agreement, then it would also be an easier sell to the public that we're not just handing out benefits to these global corporations. It's actually about bringing jobs here to Finland.
Exactly. And we know from before we sort of put the shovel in the ground, we know what this effort will buy us in form of investments, work, hotspots, everything. Yeah. So the risk is minimized to zero, unless the company doesn't go bankrupt out of a sudden. But I mean, it's that if they are the top 100 most growing companies in the world, that's probably not the biggest concern that we should have.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a very actually implementable, actionable approach. So I hope that someone from the government is listening and taking notes. Yeah. One last question before we wrap up, because this is 2023. I have to ask a question about AI. You're not an AI expert. I'm definitely not. But I just read recently, Goldman Sachs released a report saying that 300 million jobs could be automated or lost because of AI over a pretty short time span. Do you think that AI we're gonna see some benefits like this year, next year, some risks, some benefits in the economy? Could this boost the productivity that we haven't been able to figure out some other way, or is it actually going to be a problem with the loss of a lot of jobs very rapidly? What are your thoughts?
It's a great thing. I mean, it's like the conveyor belt in Henry Ford's factories back in the 100 years back from today. When there's new technology hitting the economy, there's always a lot of concern that, so what happens to the work? Yeah. I mean, there was concerns about that in the 90s even, that, computers, so now we're going to be redundant. And for sure there is a period of time when there is a mismatch that certain jobs are dying out and other jobs are coming in, and there's sort of a period when might be a struggle. But the history has shown that it's literally a matter of just going from sort of lesser and less interesting jobs towards something that is more rewarding for us humans to do. So we should embrace artificial intelligence every way we can. It seems that with ChatGPT and others, it's now literally taking off. Yeah. And we should embrace it and sort of, instead of try to push back, instead of trying to push back progress, because progress is going to prevail anyway. So we might as well be, the first movers.
Yeah. This feels like this could be another area where a forward-thinking smaller nation could have an advantage of the larger nations that are less open. I think I read that Italy or Germany or something are considering banning ChatGPT, which doesn't feel like, having lived in Germany, doesn't feel like a very...
That's really, really strange. I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but Americans love to make fun of Europeans for how, whenever they see an innovation, they think of how they can regulate or ban it. But this could be maybe an area for Finland to really boost our productivity.
Yeah, but I mean, EU was also one of what sort of really forward-looking when it came to certain rules on the internet and stuff like that. Then again, so it's not only bad, but if it's like, let's ban Chat GPT, I mean, it's like, what are you thinking? But perhaps that's good for us in Finland as long as we don't do it. So, in a nutshell, let's make Finland the #1 country for foreign direct investments. It's the quickest way to get anything moving on a broader scale. We need to have a massive amount of investments here. We should do whatever we can to make that happen, and make Finland better for ourselves in the progress. I mean, less bureaucracy, more transparent taxation rules, more people, better connectivity to the world, all this, and we should embrace everything new that it seems to actually be in the stage of just about to take off. That's how we can fix this quickly.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up the episode. So thank you so much, Martin, for coming on the show.
Thank you.